The Gourmet Gladiator. Chapter 47. You only get one throw. I cry on the floor as Rebecca and George hurtle over my limp body.
The anger and shame being my face to a red mess of tears.
I shake as I get on my knees. I shout out in anger. The other students look at me with pity. Ugh, a fist to my fat stomach. Tears brought up in my eyes. Sadness and guilt were wrapping around my head. Bob was in front of me. He was only 10 at the time, and me being a little ball of lard. Stop your whining, Bob said with a menacing tone.
His eyes looked at me like a shark.
I was his prey.
And passers-by and other kids just looked at me.
Their mouths were open and worried, but yet they still did nothing.
All I did was eat the same food.
Another fist to the gut made me bawl tears. No one is ever going to be your friend. A black boot kicks the side of the head, making it ring like hell. It was George. He looked at me with voidless eyes. You're more of a ball of pity than you are a ball of fat. Weakling, George said. Then they proceeded to beat the hell out of me. The cracking of my ribs and ripping of skin. I felt like a pig that went off to get sorted. That damn memory. Now I'm pissed. I stumble up onto my feet and walk over to this bun filled with bland white balls.
I'll show you who the ball of pity is now, I whisper under my breath as I stumble to the arena.
The other students stand up and watch the two losers run. They look at me and whisper among them. I can imagine the words of how I'm a weakling. About how I'm the loser now. About how two bastards beat me. I reel back my arm and take a shaky breath in. My lungs feel like a pile of ash. My lips are cracked and I can barely move. This ball throw will be the only one I get. And without powers I couldn't be here. I don't think that failing a normie test is all that important. I throw the ball with all my might, my arm strains and my muscles tear more. I get on my knees and groan quietly in pain. I hold my arms as if by doing that I could stop them from completely tearing apart. The ball hurtles through the air, spinning so fast that it nearly looked like it wasn't moving at all. It whistles through the air and this sound brought a tear crashing down the side of my face. And Rebecca and George both running in sync about being perfectly in line with the ball. Blam! The ball strikes true in the face of George, stopping his footing and slamming into Rebecca. The ball spinning into George's face. The smoke rises from the plastic white ball as it rolls off of his face. He was looking at me with those same eyes as Bob back then.
I was proud to see it this time around.
Looks like it will be a tie, Mr. Mice declares as he floats down. He stares at Rebecca and George.
Both of you weren't giving it your all.
You both fail, Mr. Mice sharply turns towards me and growls. His eyes feral and his body erupting in muscles. And you, Toby, Mr. Mice's voice grew incredibly deep as he walked towards me. I stumble up onto my feet. My knees shaking terribly and my arms beating alongside my heartbeat. Mr. Mice stands in front of me with his now huge and frighteningly big figure. Good job. You're the only one that took both the second stage and first stage with everything. Good job indeed, he says with a smile and his normal goofy voice. I was dumbstruck with what to say. How? He cheated, a student shouts out as he runs to the front of the group. He was broad-chested with muscles damn near tearing the suit he wore in half. Mr. Gilly, I never said that you couldn't attack another student.
Plus this was all just a test of will.
Most of you are sheep, Mr. Mice says with a calm tone. Gilly over there steps back and gasps. What do you mean by that? Gilly asks the question that the others are wondering. Well, you did what you were told and nothing else. Whereas Toby totally changed the game by adding violence and arrogance. And when it came to the ball throwing, instead of throwing him up, he decided even though he lost, the war wasn't over and threw the whole part of the second test to the side to land just one more shot to end the reign of those who beat him. And he passed the test with flying colors by just following what was in his heart.
So every single one of you failed except for Toby. They all look at me and I smile back.
I couldn't move, but the pride in my smile was all I needed to spread the message of my name. Yay. What do I get for being the only one to pass? I ask as I look Mr. Mice in his eyes. He was more intimidating in this form. But with my body weak right now, I can't really be hurt more. I do think you deserve something. How about this, Toby? Since you asked me for a prize, you can either get all your wounds healed and your body back to good, or you can skip the next test. Mr. Mice stares into my eyes. His words are all just tricks. I know what he wants. And I can't say I want any different. Then go ahead and heal my body, I say as Mr. Mice pulls out a comically huge syringe of some type of goo. This is going to hurt a lot, Mr. Mice says as he pushes the needle in my left arm, injecting me with the goo. My skin felt like it was on fire, but my wounds and body ache were gone. I clench my teeth and breathe through the pain until it fades away. Time to win the second test, I say with confidence as I stare back at George. He couldn't even stand up, he was so mad. Can't wait to break his spirit the second time around. The Gourmet Gladiator. Chapter 48 Run. I jump in place, looking around at the rest of the competition.
My body is shaking in anticipation.
War and blood is going to spray the floor as others now know that attacking on another is one way to win at this game. My heart thumps and my head pounds. That medicine I don't think is helping me with my nerves. And knowing that Rebecca and George are right behind me, I am going to have to focus on dodge and weaving their long-range attacks. The sheer thought of getting struck again in the head while running infuriates me. My fingers twitch as I growl. The other students look at me. They're jealous of me. They want to tear me down before this test is over. But I want to tear them all down to make myself shine brighter. Go, Mr. Nice shouts out, and immediately people let loose instead of taking their first steps forwards. As I was in front of everyone, I blasted off. Ice, fire, goo, and all sorts of disgustingly weak projectiles fly over my head. But what does that matter? I swing my arms and pound my legs. I was going as fast as I could with me not having any powers running through my body. A bridge of ice forms over me and crashes down in front of me like a bridge. Andrew was running as fast as he could over the bridge.
The other students used the ramp that he made, making me go around it so as not to fall into the same trap as that about to break the bridge. Crash.
And as Faith shows it, the dumb follow the dumber.
Each student that foolishly followed Andrew was crushed beneath the ice.
I'll have to pat a couple of them for a power or two if I want to stay in this test. Boom. A loud explosion goes off behind me, and next thing I saw was George and Rebecca passing me as they fly through the air in a ball of steel. They were running inside a giant impenetrable ball. I'll crush them, I shout out as I keep running. Andrew then throws a fireball and a row of green vines at me. Too bad that Andrew is as strong as he is stupid. The fireball burns the vines and I manage to roll out of the way of the fireball. I continue my run, breathing heavily already. If I don't get power soon, I'll have to be beaten. I can't lose. Not while Telisa is the one who recommended me. I turn around and run towards the other students running my way. They look at me and their jaws unhinge and drool of anticipation begin to drip on the floor. They can't wait to run me over and take me out. But as I dive into the herd, I was struck in the ribs, face, and gut. 3 powers in total shoot into my body as I turn and run along with the crowd, groaning in pain, making me a huge punching back to the others. But as more and more students bash into me, I get even stronger. My muscles grow twice as big, my very skin becomes a living flame, and on the joints of my hand red crystals form. My bottom jaw and legs become iron as red crimson lightning coils around my heels. Boom. Streaks of lightning fill the room as students and air crash into the walls, jangling and screaming for me to stop running. I pass Andrew and strike the back of his head, smashing his face into the ground as if he was part ostrich. Then as I pass the metal ball those 2 cowards hide in, I launch a ball of liquid hot metal towards it. I boosted the lightning power once more, turning it white. Now time was slower than me. People were running, but I was faster than them all. Even the one that I stole the power from was running as fast as a normal human to my eyes. I ran up next to him. He was a tall guy with broad shoulders and golden skin. Lightning was coiling all around his body. He looks at me and his eyes fill with fear. I strike his jaw, and I nearly cringe as I hear the slow cracking and displacement of his jaw as he flies towards the wall. But no matter, in this form I'll just go past the limits. I sprint around the arena, touching every student, absorbing their powers and becoming the ultimate form. My eyes glow bright green, spikes pop out of my back, my fingers elongate, my neck shortens and becomes scales of flaming red crystals, my bones creak as they grow bigger, ice forms horns on my forehead. A humongous tail erupts out of my pants and becomes huge and muscular. My jaws become a mesh of metal fangs and acid saliva, my nose shrinks as blue flames erupt out of my nostrils, and my smile widens as my throat couldn't hold back the laughter. Ha ha ha. Now as a monster I go around the arena at such speed, striking the students with all I got. Bones pops, snaps, crunches, and squishes beneath my knuckles. My fingers melt through the iron ball, revealing George and Rebecca. Only to see George staring at me as Rebecca was in mid-motion of running. I pull out of nowhere a cartoonishly big hammer and raise it in the air. Let me pound that smile out. H-A-H-A-H-A, I shout out as I strike his dome into the ball, imprinting a blood smear of his face on the metal. I slow down just a tad to begin to hear the crashing and screaming, and the other students cry as time catches up with them. It was just a massive joke to be in a contest with me. The winner of the first superpower test is none other than Toby. Mr. Mice declares as everyone looks up in tears at him. I look up at him with a beastly smile of pride. Help, he's not breathing. Rebecca screams, nearly snapping our necks to look at her holding George's head in her lap. The Gourmet Gladiator.
Chapter 49 Victory. Mr. Mice hovers over George and smiles as he begins to shove a needle in George's arms.
The rest of the students stare at me like a jock who went a little too rough on a nerd. Well, maybe I should take a step back from this situation. Asterisk asterisk. Fatty, Bob shouted at me. I was no better than him. He sneered at me with a crooked smile. The non-stop threats and brutal beatings. He was ruthless. I had broken bones and blood all over my clothes for no reason. Maybe you should just kill yourself and get this over with, he said so carelessly with such powerful words. And all because I got a better test score. Asterisk asterisk. Damn. I can't get this right. I got the people close to me killed because of this attitude. And now I stand around people who glare at me with their judging eyes. I went a little brutal on them. I copied their powers and nearly handicapped most of them in a simple test. Not the kind of power that one who is aiming to be top chef should show off. I walk over towards them and Mr. Mice holds up his giant gloved hand and motions for me to stand back. I do so without asking a question. Sorry, I state nervously and nearly in a whisper. Rebecca jumps up on her feet and looks at me with tears and anger nearly bleeding out of her eyes. You think sorry can heal what you did? You're only a destroying machine, she shouts as she pokes me in my chest. You nearly killed everyone here. And you speak of beating everyone. Why not beat us fairly? Instead of breaking our bones just to win. Rebecca weeps and crashes before me on her knees. I look behind me to see everyone limping towards me. Tears and blood staining all of their faces. I don't know my story, I say as I stare into her eyes. Serious as a heart attack and sincere as I could possibly be. I've lost 3 loved ones because of my actions. I would have killed any of you for a chance to meet one of them again. I thought about you and George again and again, thinking that you and him are just there to make a fool out of me. I began to quiver as my veins began to bulge. And do you know who had to pay every time I made a mistake? Me, Roxy, and my parents. I state as tears blur my vision. My voice shakes as my teeth clenches. I could feel her neck in my hands. Her life force leaves her body as she kneels in front of me. I wanted to choke her so badly. I wanted my pain to stop and my sight to clear. My breathing was becoming rapid and unsteady.
I was about to pass out if I don't calm down. Yeah, and look at me.
The fat pig that you used to be friends with is now the chick that spends time with the top jock. I'm looked at as being a whore, and yet you complain about everything and run from every problem you had. She says with a vile smile. She presses her finger on my chest and stands on her tippy toes as she whispers in my ear. And George told me that day that when you ate the table you were so worn and torn as if you actually could work all that fat off of your body. Nice try, Toby, but you're still a fat rich kid on the inside. Rebecca pushes herself away from me and begins to laugh out loud. I shake there angrily. My body was nearly halfway there from exploding in rage and killing her. I wanted to more than ever. And the worst bit is that after getting rid of me you fall in love with a rag of a girl. It's hilariously pathetic. I don't know what moved my body. Blackness was all that could be seen. I know my muscles were moving like a train. shifting back and tightening before releasing and relaxing. A brick wall, it felt like, was being smashed at the end of my fist.
I couldn't hear the bricks or anything break.
Just that what my fist was hitting was breaking something. My chest felt cold and my legs felt non-existent.
A peak of flesh was seen.
And it was Roxy's eyes. Only her eyes were flashing on me. In those eyes were many things. Many ways to help people. Love, fear, and sadness was all that I saw in them. Even her gaze didn't show she held resentment for backstabbers like Luke. And yet she was shot down and probably buried somewhere that I couldn't find if I wanted to. She never lived a day on this earth according to everyone now. But I know her.
I loved her.
And yet people don't even know what power this girl had in just her mere presence. She was the doctor that destroyed the bad and healed the hope. But she was dead now. The salty tears are the only thing I could feel burning the side of my face. Something hits my ribs.
I don't know how to describe it. It's not like a fist or bat or anything like that.
But I don't feel it stabbing into my body like a knife or any other thing. Just a burst of pain is what is felt, snapping my eyes open to see Mr. Mice in front of me with his hair a mess and his hands out in front of him. The other students were on each side of me, pushing against me. Rebecca stares at me with her smile as George rises up onto his butt, looking at me with sweet joy on his face. The Gourmet Gladiator. Chapter 50. Blow for blow. I never thought I felt so angry before. My bones shake and my fists are clenched. And Mr. Mice was looking at me with a wild expression on his face. He was a mixture of pissed off and worried.
And I could blame him.
He stopped me from showing everyone here that it's best not to piss me off. And I even tried to calm down. But Rebecca knows how to get under my skin. She'll do this again to make a point. I heard the conversation. So I won't expel you. But do that little stunt again with that kind of hostility, then I'll be forced to take your powers and throw you on the streets. Mr. Mice states coldly.
He brushes his messed up hair to the side and hovers up above everyone.
You're only here because of me, George mumbles under his breath. I could barely hear it. But those 6 words are the only things he needed to state. What do you mean by that? I ask as I put my hands in my pockets.
You were only here because I shoved that fat mouth of yours into the table that you swallowed, he states before chuckling.
My body twitches with rage. I took a step towards him, and Rebecca, Andrew, and Pixie all stood in front of me. Back up. We don't want to see you expelled, Andrew states as he raises all 4 hands up to me. His face is full of worry and his words the same. Why? Just to see me suffer, I state, quickly realizing that I was only repeating what I wanted to say for years back when Bob was bullying me. I wasn't the one suffering in this predicament. All of the other students were. No, we just want you not to hurt anyone, Pixie says as she places her hand on my shoulder. Her face is sincere and kind. Her eyes said that she was sad and afraid of me. I let out a sigh and walked to pick up a white ball. The other students follow my lead and pick up their balls. I am scared now. I ran out into the middle of the arena and spread my limbs out. The students all stare at me with dumbstruck expressions on their faces. And who could really blame them? In their viewpoint, I'm the one who is having massive mood swings and are now acting randomly. Everyone strike me with all you got.
Show Mr. Mice that you want to win no matter what stands in your way. I shout out and stare at them with a grin on my face.
The students didn't hesitate. And the worst bit was that they were allowed to use their powers to throw their balls. And when the sea of white fury was coming at me, I closed my eyes.
Blam.
Crack. Pop. My left shoulder dislocates as a ball of steel crashes into it. A rain of punches and low blows felt like they were striking me.
Crack.
Another ball strikes my rib cage and cracks it,
sending a tear down my eye as more rushes of blows and hit me, breaking me more.
But it was worth it. The rushes of flames and ice both scaring my skin was plenty of pain.
At the moment my brain is having one hell of a time describing to myself what kind of excruciating pain that I was going through.
I know that my mouth was wide open and tears and blood were beginning to run down my body. That tells me that the type of pain that was literally breaking me is indescribable. Okay, throw your ball now, Toby, Mr. Mice states. The other students look at me with a smile on their face.
I look at them with a bigger one.
Rebecca and George must have already thrown theirs. And as for everyone else, I don't think I saw anyone throw their balls up in the sky. Good. They focused each throw in, only hurting me. Hell, my body looks like a blueberry wearing a villain costume.
It hurt to move, but it was good pain.
They now hold something over me. They all gotta hit me, and I don't want them back. Something that I didn't have for a long time. Yes, sir, I state as I throw my ball up in the air. It spun and came back down on my head. Clunk. A soft thud as it hits the floor next. The other students laugh at me. He failed the test. Looks like he gives up. A loud individual shouts out proudly. And good. He deserves to shout that out. But I did not in any way give up. Actually, Toby passed this test too, Mr. Mice states, and the other students stare at him as if he just spoke Chinese.
See, children, the first two tests were more about a person's will.
Because this is a place to learn about your power and enhance it.
And so the first test is more of a warm-up/personality quiz.
And for the second test, it was just to show off my ability. And because none of you actually threw it up, I couldn't grade any of you correctly. Toby here took advantage of the vague rules and explanation that I gave. And so he baited you all into throwing your balls with all your strength at him. And he threw it up so that he could throw his ball the highest and pass the second test with flying colors. Evil but smart of him. Mr. Mice looks at me with a sly smile. He was impressed by my intellect. But to be fair, I just wanted to see their expressions when they took their throws against me. I only threw my ball up because I didn't want to hit another student.
It would only make me look like an ignorant brat who just wants to take revenge.
The Gourmet Gladiator. Chapter 51 Fight. The students roar and sprint towards me. They were about to knock me into the grave. I smile at them with my broken body. I don't have Fiacla by my side, so all I got left is my two fists and my face.
I'll just have to bear the pain and hope that someone here.
Never mind. No one here has a healing ability except for Andrew. And it's really just covering a wound and sealing it up, more than just regeneration. Mr. Mice looks at me and then at them. He knows he'll have one heck of a time to face if he tries to protect me. So he crosses his arms and begins to watch. These guys will tear me apart.
So I'll have to use what I know of street fighting to get around this dilemma.
The first punch is thrown. Lightning coils around it. My eyes are barely able to catch up with the fist. So he is only able to go up to level 1 of his power. Too bad. He might have ended this quite fast if that wasn't the case. I duck under him and punch him in the gut. He spews vomit on my back as he stumbles back. I stand up straight and a leg is about to sweep my feet out from under me. I jump over the leg and get met with a fist to my face.
Two different powers run through me as I land on my back.
I stand up and breathe heavily. It feels like my body is shutting down.
My lungs went down first. I look around and see no one that I immediately recognize.
A white gloved fist strikes me while I'm down.
I look up and see a man wearing a tight white mask.
He looked at me with angry blue eyes and sparkling white teeth. His suit was nylon blue and sparkly like glitter. I thought it was funny looking and maybe a bit too tight for him. Very revealing for a man as slim as him. "You arrogant bastard," the man shouts as he strikes my face with his fist.
I strike back and his skin turns to stone almost instantly, nearly breaking my hand.
He strikes my face again. Instinctively I raised my arms up in front of my face and suddenly it felt like I was getting punched from every angle. One to my right arm, right side of face, left arm. Strike after strike, the man did not let up from his assault. Then, if I warranted more pain, nails fall and strike into my legs. I could barely see them peering out from top off the man's head. "George," I shout through clenched teeth.
Of course he couldn't waste a second to attack me.
"Don't lose track of who's whooping your ass," the man says angrily as another barrage of blows strike upon my body and arms. My skin begins to turn to stone to protect my body from his blows. Now I know his power and how it works. Seems like it's in its first level.
so boosted once more.
My skin transforms into stone, allowing me to rise on my feet and drop the guy off of me. Hey, that's my power, he shouts out as he stumbles up onto his feet. I pull the nails out of my legs, spewing blood onto the arena. Help me defend and I can lend you power. He looks at me as my words shake.
He reached out with his hand as if to shake mine.
And I take his hand in mine as a fireball flies towards us. I launch the two other powers that are roaring into my body and launch them into him. He screams out loud as his costume begins to rip. Red energy begins to surround his fists. Oh God, he screams out as he stands in front of the fireball.
He throws a punch and a surge of red energy blasts out in front of him, dispersing the fireball and knocking over the students.
Now this is power. Both of my arms turn into plastic. But with stone being over my skin I should be good. And the power he has will certainly disappear soon. But I can't move my arms. That's going to make fighting a little bit of a problem. Too bad I can't choose which limb will become plastic. How did Million get this powerful? Pixie shouts out as she looks at him with an eyebrow raised.
Better question is, how does he have two powers? Andrew asks as he raises his one normal hand out.
He was about to take away powers. That was something I didn't care about. Once he steals Andrew's powers I can go back to normal. Or at least that is how I think that is how this side effect works. Or do I need to touch him again? I'm going to crush you all, Million shouts out loud as his jaw turns into metal.
His muscles begin to rip his costume as they grow.
This is going to be quite a show.
But I do need my arms to recede back to normal.
Otherwise I'm going to be in trouble. Enough, Mr. Mice shouts, making everyone stop in their tracks. As Million walks over to me he stops and begins to shake violently. Mr. Mice runs over towards him. Boom.
Lightning strikes out of him and into my arms,
receding them back to normal. Those powers are still rushing through me. Toby, go in your room and wait for your match with Rebecca. He demanded and I obey. At least I know that once a certain time is reached I can have the powers I give back. Yes sir, I state as I walk into my room. My face and body are hurting and all worth the pain. Other collections. The Gourmet Gladiator. Chapter 52 begin. The pain running through my muscles and blood was nearly making me kneel on the arena floor. I slouched down towards the ground and put my hands on my knees. I look over at Rebecca. She was staring at me like I was some sort of demon that needed to be vanquished. But my body is doing a better job of that right now than she could manage to do. Some parts like my shoulders and parts of my stomach felt like they were burning while my neck and chest felt like they were getting stabbed by something frozen. But overall I was definitely weakened. And as cameras and TV began to light up the arena, whole bunch of people were at home watching me and Rebecca silent at night. Everyone gets ready for a fight so brutal that your kids should not be watching. The fight that shows the top students and the underdog coming for his place. I present to you a thrilling fight amongst students to show you what the Culinary Coliseum teaches here. Mr. Mice declares loudly and full of pride. He throws his hand towards Rebecca. On my left you'll see a young woman whose power is to make anything out of her hair and change her shape. She goes by the name of Gummy Girl.
And she ain't as sweet as she would let you on.
She's here to bash the competition. He then threw his hand towards me. And the person she faces is a man that looks like a monster, fights like a monster, and has manners of a monster. His powers are unknown and yet he still has managed to become top student here. I give you Toby the Terrible. He lowers his hands and floats to the top of the arena. Fight. Rebecca runs towards me and pulls on a strand from her head. The strand of hair then transforms into a giant double-edged iron sword. Must be hard to wield as she is already beginning to sweat. But I stay crouched to the ground. I wasn't allowed to bring Fiacla on stage with me, so I'm fighting powerless. And with her powers I can't manage to do any damage with just my fists. I'll have to win this some other way, but how? Crash. The sword lands right next to me, sending rubble into my face. The sword raises in the air and looks at me. Rebecca smiles as she swings the blade again.
I strike her wrist with my left hand and then strike her throat with my right.
She jiggles backwards, dropping the sword on the ground. but otherwise she was unfazed by my attack. I knew that was going to be the case. I grab the sword and shake like crazy to lift it in front of my face. I hold it with 2 hands as if it was my lifeline.
Sweat was making my hold slippery.
And now she pulls out 2 strands of hair and turns them into a couple clips of ammo and a pistol. Woo, the crowd of people shout out. I hold the blade out in front of me and look at her with challenging eyes. I let out a shaky breath of frustration. My ribs felt like they were jabbing into me. I groan. My arms shake as she begins to fire off the gun. I managed to block a few bullets with the width of the blade, but that didn't stop a couple bullets from hitting my shoulder. Snap. My shoulder dislocates and I drop the sword on the floor with a clang. I hold my left shoulder and growl as I look at Rebecca with a blurry stare.
Maybe I should transform into something that will really tick you off. She shouts out, riling up the crowd.
Maybe your lover should be the one to finish you off. My eyes widen to see Roxy standing in front of me.
It was a blurry shape of her, but nonetheless she was standing in front of me once again.
Oh, you're back, I say in a cheerful tone. I know who it really is. But that didn't stop me from feeling a happy sensation going through my body. Seeing her breath was something that I could only experience now through Rebecca's mockery. Fool, she states with Roxy's lips. It snaps all of the joy that I was feeling into not existing any longer. Roxy would never say those words. At least not to me. She was too caring to say something like that. I'll show you the fool, I say out loud, but not towards the audience like she has been doing. I state that towards Rebecca only. I sprint towards her, my fists clenched and my muscles feeling as if someone is striking him as I run. But it doesn't matter. No one gets away with slandering Roxy. She throws the gun at me and I duck under the piece of metal. She strikes out with her palm at me. I sidestep her hand and then plow my shoulder into her ribs. Toppling her onto the ground. I place her arms underneath my knees and hold her throat. She wiggles and sends her knees into my back. But that pain is nothing to me. Get off of me, she shouts and cries. The crowd goes silent. I turn my head towards them and smile. You stare with judgment. But I'll show you who's the real judge here. I strike out and watch Rebecca's head transform back to her disgusting self.
It's hard to believe that I once found her so entrancing.
But now her face is my knuckles' property. How?
Her head bounces off of the ground and smacks up into my fist.
She was becoming a personal speed bag. And her power now running through my body'll boost it to the 3rd level.
My body begins to twist and mold like a pile of jello.
I was now a giant with 4 humongous arms with blades for hands.
But the downside was that parts of my body began to melt off of me and hit the ground. I was going to be in the hospital after this fight.
It's going to be worth every second of pain. Other collections. About US. Inkit is the world's first reader-powered publisher, providing a platform to discover hidden talents and turn them into globally successful authors. Write captivating stories, read enchanting novels, and we'll publish the books our readers love most on our sister app, Gladiator, and other formats.
And that was the Gourmet Gladiator, completed and finished. You can check this story out on Inkit. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I will post a video about me reviewing said book from all these other people that have read it. And I would like to say thank you all for listening and coming to this point in time. Congratulations, you just listened to 75,000 plus words. Congratulations. Hope you have a good day. Like, subscribe, and share.